very much, and welcome to the joint Baltimore Metropolitan Council meeting with Baltimore Regional Transportation Board meeting. This morning's meeting will include approval of minutes from our January meeting, 2 action items for the Transportation Board, a presentation on a regional issue survey, and a brief presentation by our executive director, and finally, a public participation opportunity. So thank you all for being here. And this morning, we're going to start with our fabulous MDOT Secretary, Katie Thompson. I would like to welcome Secretary Thompson, who will give some remarks to us this morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you all for allowing me to join you today. I want to just start with some high-level remarks about kind of an overview of everything going on across the transportation system in Maryland, but start by thanking all of you for your extraordinary leadership. We couldn't do the work that we need to do at MDOT without all of your input and guidance. Also want to thank President Ferguson and the General Assembly for the tremendous support coming out of the General Assembly in this legislative session. All of our safety bills passed, which helps us, again, do our job better and continue to drive safety improvements across the state. I am about 3.5 months into my job, and I continue to learn a lot, but I am inspired and energized by everything that I am seeing. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you on our shared goals to uplift Maryland from the heart of Baltimore City to the surrounding counties and across the Chesapeake Bay. This region is vitally important to the state. Governor Moore is a fierce advocate for this region and has repeatedly emphasized the need for us to make continued investments and position Baltimore for strength today and strength in the future. As I said, I'll share a little bit more about the Moore-Miller administration's vision for transportation and the major projects happening in the region. And as I mentioned, our legislative wins from this General Assembly. My vision for the department and the transportation system in Maryland is really not new, but I hope it will be impactful. We are focusing on creating a transportation system that works for everyone, and most importantly, it is safe and reliable. We will continue to take a proactive approach to improving safety. We will get back to basics to keep well-maintained highway and transit facilities that improve the customer experience and get people where they need to go. We will efficiently and effectively deliver critical infrastructure investments that support economic growth and connect Marylanders to opportunity. And we will take a balanced approach to implement multimodal transportation solutions to address Maryland's diverse mobility needs and improve the quality of life and accessibility. You hear this from repeatedly from us, but it remains true that safety is the core of everything we do. We are serious about safety, as I know all of you in this room are as well. Each project and improvement we make to our transportation system across all modes is done with the intention of improving safety for Marylanders. As National Work Zone Safety Awareness Week comes to an end, and I'm sporting my pen today, Maryland is making tremendous progress, but we don't rest on our laurels. Last year, we had a 12% decrease in work zone crashes from 2024. And while this progress is encouraging, additional work is needed. With Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller's leadership, Maryland continues to push forward in our Vision Zero efforts to protect everyone on the road, including our workers. We are building on the accomplishments from Governor Moore's Work Zone Safety Work Group that was chaired by Lieutenant Governor Miller. And in partnership with the General Assembly, several safety-related bills targeting dangerous driving behavior and impairment passed the recent legislative session. Moving ahead, as we live in an interconnected region with many crossing state lines, Marylanders will have an expanded toolbox for holding out-of-state drivers accountable for their conduct. And we look forward to engaging with other states in the District of Columbia to roll out reciprocal agreements that will promote safety and allow for more effective enforcement. We will also continue to work closely with our local partners to bring automated speed enforcement along major safety corridors to help curb aggressive driving. And we're making the state's ignition interlock program more accessible by allowing drivers with an alcohol restriction on their license to automatically opt into the program. We look forward to adding these new pages to our safety playbook and for using them to save lives, especially the lives of the dedicated men and women who keep the roads safe for all of us. Turning to the Consolidated Transportation Program, the Moore-Miller administration has a bold yet achievable vision for Maryland's future. This includes planning, designing, and building safe, multimodal, and reliable infrastructure that supports Maryland's current and future mobility needs and will grow our economy. The CTP for 2026 to 31 commits $22 billion to effectively deliver on this vision. While we know our resources are constrained, we are working to get the most out of every dollar we invest. The CTP, again, prioritizes safety, system preservation, but it also drives economic growth across Maryland. On the transit side, the Moore-Miller administration continues on focusing on connecting communities to each other and to opportunity. And in my short time in this position, I've had a number of conversations, many with those of you in the room, about how we can better improve transit and connectivity in Baltimore City and in and across Baltimore County, and look forward to continuing to work with you on that. MTA is investing $1.4 billion in light rail modernization. We are moving forward in 2026, advancing plans for new, modern, and low-floor vehicles that I've had the chance to ride on, I think now twice with Mayor Scott. But it also includes upgrades to our stations and facilities and systems and maintenance programs. We are also rolling out new Baltimore Metro subway rail cars, as I referenced, and Mayor Scott and I enjoyed riding them most recently with Governor Moore. These new cars were desperately needed to replace cars that had been in service for more than 40 years. Earlier this month, some of you joined Governor Moore and me for a roundtable from the Baltimore Region Transit Transit-Oriented Development Strategy, which will address desperately needed housing needs, but also provide transportation to connect people to the places they need to go. With your partnership, we are very excited to move forward with transit-oriented development to advance the housing, ridership, and overall connectivity that really is essential to growing the region's economy. We will also be doing more, do so with more tools, thanks to the General Assembly passing Governor Moore's Transit and Housing Opportunity Act. On the red line, MDOT remains committed to providing a reliable east-west transit line across the region, not just because it is needed to serve that part of the city, those parts of the city, but also because it ties into broader connectivity in and around Baltimore. Because of federal funding uncertainty, we'll be hosting a series of open houses in May to engage the community and assess the financially viable and workable path forward that meets the needs of the community. Discussions will focus on exploring new delivery strategies for a realistic path forward, including proceeding with the full 14-mile light rail project, phasing a light rail project by splitting it into smaller portions over time, and revisiting bus rapid transit. We look forward to the engagement with you and the public as we continue to work to meet the region's needs. For state highways, our program also involves major highway investments, including fully funded major safety and mobility investments, including I-97 in Anne Arundel County. The State Highway Administration continues to invest in safety with nearly $540 million programmed to complete street-focused projects, which is a record level of investment for these initiatives. The investment materializes in state highways delivering on its pedestrian safety action plan. All 23 high-risk corridors identified in the PSAP, including in Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Harford, and Howard counties, are in development through various safety-focused delivery programs at state highways. We are making investments in safety improvements across our system for those who walk, bike, and roll, like the construction of a new shared use path along MD 27 connecting to the Westminster Community Trail Network, and continued support of local connectivity projects such as sidewalk upgrades on Washington Road through programs like Safe Routes to School. I'm very excited about other upcoming projects that will help grow Maryland's economy. At BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, a major runway rehabilitation program will kick off this summer to resurface the entire length of one of our primary commercial runways. MAA is also replacing the World War II era air traffic control tower at Martin State Airport in Baltimore County. At the Port of Baltimore, we are seeing lots of positive developments. 2025 saw our second best year in history for cargo volume, moving 50 million tons and generating nearly $66 billion in revenue. The rebound is ongoing, but nothing short of miraculous in the wake of the 2024 collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And soon, the completion of the Howard Street Tunnel project will carry an even brighter economic future to the port and its national and international customers. The tunnel expansion, and we'll do a ribbon cutting in May, will allow for double-stacked rail cargo in and out of the port, filling a missing link in double-stack capacity along the East Coast, enhancing the port's reach into Midwest markets and easing some of the reliance on truck freight in and around the area. Also, just 2 years after the Key Bridge collapse, we've made tremendous progress on rebuilding the bridge and restoring this critical transportation link and iconic landmark to Baltimore. We are moving forward with the estimated $175 million Bay Bridge Protection Program. While the bridge's pier protection design and conditions meet the current requirements of its federal permits, the project is designed to meet current industry standards and provide an improved level of protection for the bridge. Meanwhile, the Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study, Tier 2 NEPA, continues to advance towards completing a final environmental impact statement and record of decision. We expect that the Federal Highway Administration will issue the combined final environmental impact statement and record of decision, identifying the selected alternative later this year. This is just a snapshot of some of the incredible work that is happening across Maryland and in the Baltimore region. I am really thrilled to join you today, and I look forward to continuing to work with you as we advance the transportation mission for the people of Maryland, and love to take questions, and I look forward to participating in today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you very much. Any questions for the Secretary? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Secretary, thank you for your presentation. And MDOT has lots of good things moving forward. About the red line, so it sounds like all modal possibilities are on the table at this point, including bus rapid transit, and also in terms of sort of the full route, how far it goes in the east, that those are options that are on the table.
Those are options on the table. What we've tried to do is I'll say when I was at USDOT, probably, 10 years or even more ago, we were talking about the red line and what are viable paths. What we've done currently, and Liz can speak to this too, is kind of collect and assess all the information that we've heard over the years, look at the political and economic environment, consider what we understand to be the needs of the community, and lay out potentially viable options for moving forward. And that includes, the several options that I laid out. All of that will be presented in the open houses. I hope you can attend them. And then we'll take that information in and evaluate what makes the most sense and best meets the community needs and make a decision. We think late this year or very early next year. But Liz, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that's a strong summary. We're looking forward to hearing from people about what the options are. Since we last evaluated the mode, things have really changed in terms of the federal financial situation. And so we want to go back out and present the costs, the benefits, the pros, the cons, and facilitate a real conversation.
Just a quick follow-up. So it sounds like by early next year, MDOT will make a recommendation as to how to proceed with on the red line.
That's our goal. I mean, I think, and the mayor is keenly aware, as I think all of you in the room are keenly aware of this. Baltimore has been waiting so long for transit solutions that we want to make smart decisions, but we need to make them in a timely way so that we can actually begin to address the needs and, build out and get a program into operation.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Our first order of business today is the approval of October 2025 meeting minutes, which are in your packets. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Mike, I'm going to ask you to guide us through the remaining action items, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since this is a joint meeting, we have a couple of BRTB items and a few BMC items. First, we are going to approve the BRTB's FY27 fiscal year budget. Todd Lang will walk us through that. Todd Lang will also walk us through the approval of the financial forecast for our next long-range plan. After that, we will look at BMC's budget, and then we'll have our presentation on the annual issue survey. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Lang.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider Resolution 26-24. This is adopting the annual budget for the Regional Transportation Board. Again, the budget works on a state fiscal year, so this will start July 1st of 2026 and run to June 30th of 2027. We've been working collaboratively with the local jurisdictions and state agencies on developing this budget over the past couple of months. So let's get into it. It's about a $12 million budget. The funding comes from Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, the Maryland Department of Transportation, and then BMC funds through the dues that you pay into the BMC organization. What does that money go to pay for? It goes to pay for our transportation staff here at the BMC that meet all the federal requirements of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. There's also some local jurisdiction funding for individual projects and jurisdictions that kind of meet the regional focus, but then also what we call focus area consultants. And this is the money that we put out to consultants based upon issues that have been identified again by local jurisdictions and state agencies that are important to the region. These will include about a dozen different studies. I'm not going to go through all of them based upon the time that we have available, but I would like to focus on a couple of them. First is trying to prepare our local jurisdictions for driverless taxis and automated delivery vehicles, start looking at regulatory items, looking at infrastructure items, making sure we're prepared for all these different technologies that are coming to our region. Also looking at bus rapid transit. Again, there's the implementation of this in the state, and we want to see whether or not some corridors here in the Baltimore region make sense and what those applications may look like. Some things like inland flood analysis. We're all used to flooding around streams and the coastal flooding, but we're starting to get much more inland flooding. It's impacting our transportation system. So based on some new mapping, we're trying to understand what the prevalence of this is and how we can start trying to address it based on the transportation system. And then areas like transit-oriented development funding and financing based on some of the earlier work done by Transportation provides a toolkit to look at different types of financing items to move forward different TOD applications in the Baltimore region. So with that, we would like to ask the BRTB to consider Resolution 26-24, which is the annual budget for BRTB. Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Nobody? All right. If no, seeing none, is there a motion to approve this year's BRTB budget? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, all in favor? Any comments from the public?
Really,
All right.
no comments from the public in the chat.
All right, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the budget is approved. All right, we'll go to the next item.
Thank you. Today, the BRTB is being asked to consider Resolution 26-25. This is the financial forecast for the region's next long-range transportation plan that is scheduled to be adopted in the year 2027. We have to get a financial forecast to really be the basis for that plan. I have with us the Assistant Secretary, Jacqueline Hartman, who will be able to answer any questions. This forecast was really based upon the work that they've done. So based upon the federal requirements, our long-range transportation plan needs to be financially constrained. So we need to first forecast what our financial resources are going to be for the years 2032 out to the year 2055. So this is a little bit into the future, but understand that major transportation projects do take that long to actually implement. And being in this plan is actually the trigger that will allow them to start moving through the environmental studies, getting things like records of decision. So if they're not in this plan, the federal government will really not start engaging with those projects. So it's very important that we get the major projects in this plan. So how does this forecast develop? This is first started on a statewide level. Obviously, we have Consolidated Transportation Trust Fund. What the NDOT does is they look at statewide total projections moving forward from 2032 to 2055. They break out operating system preservation and then what might be available for expansion funding moving forward. How do they then bring that down into the Baltimore region? What we do is, because it's a Consolidated Transportation Trust Fund and we have things like the ports and the airports, we need to put a factor on it. What that factor is 85.2%. So we take the original statewide numbers, we bring them back down. So we're just looking at basically transit and highways and other types of surface transportation. And then to bring that down to the Baltimore region, you have to look at historical funding within the Baltimore region compared to the state. Through the years 1981 to 2025, that comes out to about 38.1%. So again, taking all of those different factors, we come down to the financial forecast for the Baltimore region in the year 2032 to 2055 for both operating, system preservation, and then what we call expansion dollars. We go towards major capacity increasing projects within the region. So quickly looking at, we do this every 4 years. So I want to give you a picture of kind of what the financial forecasts have looked like on a trend value over the past 5 plans. You'll see obviously that the funding is getting more expensive, transportation and everything is getting more expensive. Transportation is one of those areas based upon a lot of different factors that has kind of increased over the years. You'll see that this last plan, based upon the year that we adopted 4 years ago, the total dollars are really somewhat dramatically increased in terms of what we're projecting to have in those out years between 2032 and 2055. Again, increases in both operating, system preservation, and then hopefully expansion dollars that hopefully some of these major projects we've been talking about over all of these different years. I'll talk about some of the methodology about how we came to those, but we also then do a breakdown. Again, there's a heavy focus on operating and system preservation, and expansion dollars really only look at about 19% of the entire program. How is the methodology to develop all of this? Again, we do not include WMATA federal funding in this. We're just looking at state funding within this program. So federal funds that go to WMATA are separate and outside of the forecast. What we do look at is state funds use a historical annual average growth rate of about 4.5%. And then on the federal side, the average growth rate is about 3% for highways and 2.1% for transit. Looking at operating expenditures, the Maryland Department of Transportation looks at the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers, and they add 1% based on that. This is based on 2 economic forecasting firms. And the additional 1% is for those new things that we're building right now, making sure we're accommodating operating for those. On the system preservation side, the annual growth rate is about 2.5%. And again, it's not to exceed 75% of the program. So make sure you have some additional funding outside of that. And we talked about how you get from the statewide totals down to the Baltimore area through those 2 different factors. Here is the actual document. Somewhat easier for us to put on a PowerPoint to make it a little bit more readable. But we do have kind of the backup information for that. And now with that, we'd like to ask the board if there are any questions, and if not, we've asked the board to consider resolutions 26-25. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, how often is this forecast updated?
It's updated every 4 years when we do the poll. So again, we kind of looked at the history of the past 5 plans. And this kind of gives you the growth rates, and obviously operating and system reservation have gone up dramatically over that time period.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, that slide, the financial forecast comparison slide, that is a massive increase on the operating cost. That seems, I mean, that's probably what, between the 2050 plan and the 2055 plan, 45% increase in operating costs. Can you?
I think I may pass this off to the assistant secretary, but I know some of the answers based on CPI, things like that.
Good morning, everyone. Jacqueline Hartman, Assistant Secretary at the Maryland Department of Transportation. Looking at the operating forecast for the look ahead it's really built on 2 factors. One, it's assuming the operating growth that we've seen over the last, over the last history of, 20 years plus that we are looking at. We have seen some high growth in our operating budget over the last couple of years as inflation has caused a lot of our service costs to go up. So, just labor costs, materials costs, inflation costs, all of those have been hitting our operating budget hard. So part of it is that the base itself grew. And then as we look forward, assuming that we continue to grow by inflation plus that 1%, it does compound quickly over time. But a lot of the increase you see here is really because of base year increases that have already occurred.
And I guess that sort of capital as well too. I mean, it goes from 20 billion, is that billion, right? Are we in billion? Yeah, billions, right? 20 billion to 31 billion. I guess that's just the projected. Is the revenue estimated to match that?
Yes, so this is a fiscally constrained long-range plan. So what we do is first start with the revenues. The revenues are impacted by the actions taken by the legislature the last 2 years to increase transportation revenues. So that increases the base. And then looking forward, we have assumed that there's about a 4.5% growth long-term each year. So from year to year, we don't see that. Our annual revenue growth is closer to about 1 to 2%. But we know that over several decades, there will be revenue increases along the way, and that's how that average comes out. So we start first with revenues and then take off operating, and then everything else kind of falls to the capital program. So you see that as the revenues grew, that allowed us to grow the capital program here as well.
Just to clarify, just the gap between the 1% and the 4.5%, how's that covered again? That's just an assumption that there is on an annual basis, I guess there's always rollover, but
Yeah, so like on an annual year-to-year basis, if all we had was our just maintain the exact same revenues, we are only seeing growth right now of about 1 to 2% in today's economy and given today's revenue sources. We assume though, since this forecast goes all the way out to 2055, that there will be periods of more robust growth, and that along the way there will be increases in tax rates or fees along that time somewhere that allows for a higher average annual growth rate. So I guess it's kind of what we're really seeing today is about 1 to 2%. What we think we can see over the long term when you average it all out is 4.5%.
And is it true that it's wiser to err on the side of optimism in terms of growth so that you can plan for those projects than it is to underestimate?
Yes, I mean, I would say this is a reasonable but optimistic approach to the forecast so that we are allowed, as said, transportation projects take many years to plan and to construct. And so ensuring that we have the ability to start planning those projects now. And then as we get down into each of the 6-year forecasts, it will help guide us, whether we can do something in the current 6-year or have to defer it out. So yes, it is a little more sunny than our current 6-year forecast.
Thank you. I'm sure there's tons of data behind all of this, but I'm curious about how we're incorporating sort of the disruptors. So the disruptors of how much, remote work or different types and forms of delivery, or the fact that next generation is driving less. And so there's a whole lot of other market trends going on around this whole sector. And in terms of your modeling and, your overall methodologies, is any of that being factored in? Because I just feel like I'm in the field of planning, so I'm just seeing it in our socioeconomic and our demographic data of sort of how we're seeing such a shift, everything from people in physical schools to something different, and I'm just wondering, are the models being updated or looked at to sort of take into consideration some of these disruptors and market changes rather than
Yes.
historical patterns?
Yeah, so we do a robust analysis every quarter for the 6-year capital program. And that becomes the building blocks for this long range forecast as well. But ultimately in those quarterly updates to the 6-year forecast, we are thinking about, I think motor fuel is a really good one to talk about. In terms of we are seeing different commuting patterns. We're seeing people chain trips together so that they're taking less trips and, just hitting 3 stores at one time instead of several different trips. We are seeing increased fuel efficiency of the vehicles that are out on the road today. We're also seeing more electric vehicles, and also all of those are driving down consumption in Maryland as well as across the country. And so that is baked into our 6-year forecast. In Maryland, the way the tax rate allows for an inflation component, that helps to offset that consumption that we're losing. So fuel sales are going down, but because of the inflation, it kind of offsets each other a little bit. But we always are wrapping in all of those, the trends that we're seeing today, as well as taking that longer term view, as well as what we've seen in our most immediate past.
And I think just to add to what Jacqueline said, Madam Secretary, is the out years are looser assumptions because you can't reliably predict that far in advance, but the 6-year CTP, we have more refined assumptions that reflect the changes that we're seeing.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to approve of the financial forecast?
Motion approved, 26-25.
Second? Second. All right, thank you. There. Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Oh, we got somebody on there?
I think we're good, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next item.
So in your, I'll go to the next slide. In all of your packets is a copy of BMC's proposed budget for this year. It's very similar for the BMC board members who, most of you have been on the board almost 8 years at this point. It's similar to our typical budgets. A couple of changes I wanted to point out. One is there is a $300,000 decrease on the revenue line for the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. This year, the legislature passed a bill that creates a new commission that's going to replace the BRTC that will live at MTA. We are assuming that that bill will be enacted and the revenue that BMC gets from MDOT to run that program will shift over to MTA. That's not a concern for us. It just shows up on the budget. You'll also see a second pension line. We are starting to put money in the bank for the changes to state family leave law that are coming. Otherwise, the budget is what you will typically see. The major fluctuations are on the transportation side. You'll see an increase in UPWP funds. That's the budget that you guys just approved for the BRTB. That budget spends not only this year's federal money, but also incorporates remainder money from prior years. And that's all been programmed by the BRTB budget that you all just approved. So I guess we really can't question that anymore, but that's on the budget that's in there. Those are all the major changes. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Questions, all right? All right, is there a motion to approve the BMC annual budget? Yes, second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The budget is approved, Mike.
Great. Our next item of business is the presentation of the Pulse. This is our now annual issue survey. This is our third iteration of it. The last one was last spring. And when this project was conceived, the idea was to have a longitudinal poll. The idea was to have a poll with questions that would be updated on an annual basis, so we could start tracking where public opinion in the region is moving. You'll see that this year's poll is a mix of sort of tried and true questions that we will test every year and a few more topical questions relating to issues that are relevant today. I'd like to invite Dave Walker from GQR to come up and present and walk us through what we've learned from the region. You just get on right left.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, my name is Dave Walker. I'm Senior Vice President, GQR. We conduct this poll. With me is Lucina. She's a partner at GQR. I will say just a brief introduction. We enjoy doing this poll. Most of the work we do is electoral in nature, and there's, I like this survey because we're just asking people what they think, and there's no attempt to manipulate their spin what they say. It's nice, refreshing change. Just some quick, some quick notes about methodology. This is a multimodal survey. We call people on the phone, more traditional, something I've been doing for nearly 35 years. We also conduct some of the survey, a third of the survey online, and a third of the survey through text to web. And I'm sure everyone here has gotten these surveys recently. I live in Virginia, so I've gotten a lot more perhaps recently than you have. But the one thing I'll flag is that the sample size is very strong at 1,200. So this is a very responsible, scientific, and I would argue well done survey. The other thing we did, we wanted to get at least a responsible sample size in each county. And obviously, all these counties have different populations. If you just did it by proportion of the universe, what you would get is not enough people out of some of the smaller counties like Queen Anne and Carroll to look at. So we took some of the interviews that we would have used for Baltimore County, for example, and took them and put them into into the smaller counties like Queen Anne's, and then weighted it back. So the total is still, it still reflects proportionately, but the statistical strength behind each county is enhanced in the smaller counties. Just keep that in mind. So, in politics, as in, what we've been talking about, everything, demographics is destiny. You will see a lot of differences at the county level about how people are reacting to some of these issues. Some of that is reflective of what they're seeing going on around them. And some of that reflects their demography. I mean, younger people have a different opinion about a lot of these issues, particularly transportation and housing, than older people because their living conditions are different. And if you look at, say, Baltimore City, it's relatively young. So some of that is just driven, my point is some of that is just driven by who we're talking to, not necessarily by the conditions on the ground. Just important to keep in mind. The other thing, we did not ask partisanship by design in this survey, but you will see perhaps some of the responses are at least influenced by the partisanship of different parts of this region. Starting with, this is like kind of a very broad question. We throw out a lot of issues and say, are you satisfied? And what you see is a bit of a break. Most of the region loves parks and trails. They like arts and culture, public recreation and bike trails. Great rates there. And then it gets a little bit less satisfied. Schools, roads and bridges, public transportation at the bottom, should surprise no one. Traffic and transportation. So looking at that issue, again, a big regional divide. And what you'll see is, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Those people that are least satisfied with traffic, Anne Arundel, and those, probably more understandable, least satisfied with roads and bridges, Baltimore. But look at that number in Anne Arundel on traffic, 72%. That's 11 points higher than average. And compared to 20 points higher than in Howard County. This was surprising. We all know what's going on with the economy. We all know what's going on with the cost of living. And we asked people, would you be willing to pay an additional 1 cent sales tax to pay for transportation improvements? And I warned people, I said, we have to be prepared for a negative response and just live with that. And they said, fine, let's ask it. But it turned out pretty good, 58% support, opposition's 42%. That response is driven by region. Support for that sales tax is driven by region. Very high numbers in Howard County, very high numbers in Baltimore City. The more rural counties, we lose a majority in Hartford and Carroll. Also driven by age. You have massive support among younger people, and that declines steadily with age. And then when you get to seniors, we're underwater. We've asked people about their willingness to use public transportation. Very consistent over time with the last few years. I love seeing this, even though it might not seem interesting. It just, as a pollster, it is important that when you ask the same questions, you get, relatively the same results over time, because it tells you that the methodology is working. So anyway, the methodology has worked. Around 48%, a little bit less than half, say they're willing to use public transportation at least once a week. It's not a real change. It's all margin of error stuff, but between now and when we started 2 years ago at 45%, 51% not so willing. This is driven again, like everything, by age and by region. Very high numbers in Baltimore City, very low numbers everywhere else. A little bit higher, but also age. Younger people are more willing to use public transportation for a variety of reasons than people that are over 30. And then among seniors, it's just very, very low. What drives us, and this is something that's been consistent over 3 years, it's not safety, but it's convenience. Overwhelmingly. So we ask people, which of the following would make you more willing to use public transportation? Convenience stops is a leading response by far. And then you have issues of safety and frequency of trains. That's also convenience, cleanliness, cheaper fares, just 16%. I said that was interesting too. It's relatively low. Convenience matters the most. City.
I was in line here.
Obviously, the most likely to use it. So we just ask people, how important is it to you personally to have public transportation stops near your residence? Huge number in Baltimore City, not so huge numbers in Carroll and Queen Anne's and elsewhere in the state. Pretty high in Howard County too, I will flag. So the red line, I urge you to spend some time reading this question. We kind of wondered about this question and how we wrote it after we got the results. Perhaps if we have another chance next year, we will ponder our articulation of the question a little bit more. But we asked people about the red line. And what you see is it's enormously popular in Baltimore City. Somewhat popular in Baltimore County, somewhat popular in Howard, and outside of those two. I mean, and the other rest, these are people that are really not going to be affected by the red line. Obviously, they are less enthusiastic about the red line. Turning to the economy. So we've asked people, again, it's a project that's about 3 years old. We've been in this same economy, seems, for maybe more than 3 years, and are looking at pretty much the same results. We have people about the Maryland economy. Most people are split. 46% say it's excellent or good. 53% say poor or only fair. Asked the same question about their family's financial situation and get a little bit better response, but still you have roughly half of the people in this state, or the people in this part of the state that are struggling on a personal foundation. I will think there's not a lot of intensity on either end. There's not a lot of poor, 13%, it's still a lot of suffering. I don't want to discount that. But most people who are kind of in the brown and red here are saying, fair, not poor. Regionally, and this has always been true, it's been true for the last 3 years. Howard County has been a real outlier on this question, where people in Howard are saying the economy is doing very well. No one else has that view. A little bit higher in Carroll, a little bit higher in Anne Arundel, but nothing like the 70% you see in Howard. My brother lives in Howard. He's not doing well, but he's the outlier in Howard, 30%. So 8 out of 10 people are dissatisfied with the cost of living. That's not a surprise. I will flag that number is ticking up. There's not a lot of up left. Sometimes when you see trends, there's just not a lot of room to grow a number. But still, if you look at intensity, when we started in 2024, 43% were very dissatisfied. Now it's 49%. So not only is the overall number ticking up, but the intensity is 6 points higher than where we started. So the cost of living remains a huge problem in Maryland, a huge problem in the country, a huge problem in every venue we work at. Just some longitudinal results. There are some changes, not a lot of big margin of error change, but there's a bigger jump in Anne Arundel than we see in other parts of the BMC. And Hartford, and Howard County, you see similar 6-point jumps. So the cost of living, we asked them specifically thinking about the cost of living, which one or two of the following have had the biggest impact. This was something we saw last year, a big jump in utilities. That has held for the most part. It's still a leading reason at 52%. I would say I would be a little bit careful judging the time series here, because we added this year healthcare and drugs, and every time you add something to a kind of a list question, it's going to take up some of the room, even though we allow people to do multiple responses. But still, the headline is utility bills is still the biggest cost driver. Groceries at 46%, and a 4-point increase in gas. Had we do the survey, today, it might be a little bit higher on gas, given what's going on around the world. Another thing, this is just 2 counties, and you look at what has gone on with utility costs. And these are 2 of the smaller counties, but Carroll County and Queen Anne's County, and the number of people who picked utility costs as the driver of their cost of living woes, nearly doubled in Carroll County, and doubled in Queen Anne's County over the last 2 years. We asked them, what should we do about it? And they kind of tell us anything and everything. So there are 4 suggestions for lowering utility costs. The 2 highest are, the single highest really is cracking down on utility companies. That's always going to pull well. It's something I use a lot in when I wear my other campaign hat. But still, not only is the overall number striking at 88%, but the intensity at 72% strongly support is very striking. You still get a lot of support for other suggestions, including green energy at 71%, increasing natural gas at 67%, and nuclear power at 59%. So I've been doing this a long time. I will tell you, the economy always grows as an issue of importance to voters when the economy is doing well, and it tends to decline when the economy is not doing well. We've seen the numbers on the economy, and this is what we see when we ask people whether we should be placing a higher priority on the economy or a higher priority on improving the environment. By 20 points, people place more focus on the environment at 58%, 38% for the economy. Really what drives that is age. Younger people, as long as I've been working, have always been more environmentally focused than older people. So they're the outlier in this question at 56%, more focused on the environment. As you grow older, maybe you don't have to worry so much about climate change because you won't be around for the worst of it. So still, 71% of seniors are stressing the economy. And then we asked them, again, it's kind of a corollary. We asked them, what's the biggest problem with climate change? And their biggest issue is it's costing them too much money because energy prices and costs are going up. Housing and development. So again, not a lot of change here. We asked people, housing costs still a massive problem, really everywhere. There's some differences regionally, but the headline here is it's north of 74% or north of 70% everywhere, and spiking, obviously in Anne Arundel. There's still massive numbers everywhere. The intensity numbers are also worth flagging. The number of people who say major problem, 52%, obviously is a critical issue. And then we asked them, we hadn't done this before, we asked them for solutions to housing costs, and what they tell us, which I thought was interesting, is low interest rates and cost of loans. It's a leading solution there. A lot of politicians are talking about building more, but when you talk to real people, they're more focused on their end of it and lower interest rates. Not a big difference between 43% and 36%, but it's still notable that leading issue is the cost of loans. And then we asked them, kind of made up this question. We wanted to get at the idea that everyone is for building more housing, but no one wants to have more housing built in their neighborhood. Try to get at that NIMBY thing. And so we asked them, we just kind of made up, would you support or oppose construction of 100 new mixed income or affordable housing units in your community? And most do. Maryland has long been a very generous state. And 60% say yes. Huge numbers in Baltimore city. And then when you get to the more rural parts of the county, the little bit less, I guess, less support. The other thing that drives this is how long have you lived, which I thought was interesting. And among people that have lived in their residence for 20 years or more, support drops to 49%. Obviously, that's very correlated with age too. So it's hard to know whether it's because they've been in the same place or they've seen a lot of winters that's driving that. But still, it's striking that line you can draw between new residents and long-term residents. So about 2/3 of the people we talked to are owners. It's another number that's been very consistent over the last few years. 34% are renters. And then when we asked renters, do you think you're likely to be able to buy a new home? A little bit higher. We went from 42% a year ago to 45% currently. Intensity number, up a little bit. The thing I would pay attention to, this is one of those things where you kind of look at the top box and look at the people who say definitely yes. It's probably more telling than the people saying maybe. And you still see a little bit of an increase from 16 to 19%. And the other thing I just want to flag, 3 slides ago, I talked about interest rates. Obviously will make a difference. But when they ask them what stops you from buying a house, they're still saying housing prices are too high and they don't make enough money. There's a big change with older people, and these are older renters. So you gotta keep that in mind. If you're like over 50 and you haven't bought a house, I think it's dawned on you it's gonna be a struggle to eventually purchase a house in your life. The environment. Environment and quality of life. So we asked them, this is similar to the question we asked earlier, but it's a little bit different. We asked them, we gave them a list of issues and asked them, which two issues would you focus on the most? Not surprisingly, economy is the top of the list. By the way, the little box to the right of it is the change. It's the number of people the difference from last year. So last year, 36% said economy and jobs on this measure. This year, 36%, and therefore the box is 0 because there hasn't been any change. You don't see a lot of change on any of them. They're all kind of within margin of error numbers. But still, economy and jobs, crime and drugs, taxes, the 3 leading issues, housing costs also very high at 28%. A notable finding here, if you look at just people in Baltimore City and the number of people in Baltimore City who identify crime or drugs as a leading issue, 2 years ago it was 50% in Baltimore, dropped a little bit last year to 46%, now it's down to 38%. So that's a 12-year drop in the number of people in Baltimore City who are identifying crime as our leading issue. And it's pretty important. Crime is an issue. It's a little bit like cost. It takes voters a long time to notice there has been a drop. But they've noticed, at least in Baltimore City. Again, what works in Maryland, or this part of Maryland: parks, arts, public recreation, bike trails. The harder stuff gets harder reviews: quality schools, roads, transportation, traffic, and healthcare. And then if you look specifically at schools, which I think is interesting, dissatisfaction with public schools is higher among women. Not a huge change, but still, 4-point change that's within margin of error, particularly non-college women and women of color. That dropped to 34%. A lot of that depends on where you live, obviously. So these are all new questions. They're worth thinking about. Some of these will keep going on. We're all dealing with AI. Part of the earlier conversations too. We asked them, just should it be regulated more? And do we need more regulation of artificial intelligence? Massive number. 78% say yes. Not a lot of change by age, which I thought was interesting. I mean, we kind of feel like young people are bought into new technology. They're as likely as anyone else to say AI should be reined in a little bit. We asked people whether they believed AI will replace their job. I'm convinced that AI one day will replace my job. It's a significant concern. Nearly half the people are worried about AI replacing the job. What was interesting to me was the income break, because AI, it's not radiologists or doctors or software programmers. If you just look at income that are most concerned, it's people that are making less than $40,000 a year, where you have 57% are concerned AI will replace their job. I would have expected the opposite of that. Data centers, it's a growing issue throughout the country. We asked people, just a basic statement pair, which do you believe more or agree with more data centers will improve the local economy, create good-paying jobs, or data centers will not pay their fair share taxes while raising electric bills? Data centers don't do that well here. 59% are more concerned with their bills. 35% are happy about jobs. Lots of major differences regionally. And you look to the right, Carroll County, 74% to 23%. It's the biggest discrepancy here. I've done work here. What's interesting about data centers is where there's a data center, there's an issue. Where there's not a data center, people are not thinking about it. So it is very focused on what people are seeing, outside their door. Immigration, obviously, in the news a lot, less so now with the war than it was a few months ago, but still, major part of our national conversation around Maryland as well. We asked people, has the federal crackdown on illegal immigration gone too far? Not gone far enough, or about right. 59% saying gone too far. Driven a lot by ethnicity, where you have Black people in the survey are far more likely, even more than Hispanic, to say things have gone too far. The one thing I'll flag about the Hispanic number, just be wary. We don't have a lot of Hispanic sample. We almost didn't want to put it in, but we thought, given the issue, it's worth just looking at. But still, there's not a lot of statistical confidence in that number. And then we asked, I think this is the last slide, we asked about voting and efforts to enforce voter security, and whether people are more concerned about voter security or the potential of those efforts discouraging people from voting. It's not overwhelming, but 53% are more worried that efforts to prevent fraud will discourage or disenfranchise voters. And 43% are more worried that some people who are ineligible to vote in our election. Again, the Hispanic number is notable here at 64% are discouraged. Again, just be wary of that number given the statistical confidence. And that's it. There's either going to be questions or I'll see you next year.
Any questions, anybody? Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, about that. So I'm curious what jumps out to you, just at a high level. I just happened to notice that on traffic, for instance, in Anne Arundel County, where I certainly view myself as being a part of, traffic was on the lowest of where people want to see their investment dollars go, but it was on the highest of dissatisfaction. So any other anomalies like that that just
Where are you saying it's the lowest of what their investment dollars go?
what's that?
Oh, in terms of,
So
it's not,
traffic was highest on.
just in terms of priorities.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, that question is not necessarily transactional. I'll say a couple of things. People did not assume that new highways equal less traffic. Because in the beginning, it's the opposite. The other thing about traffic, it's relative.
Is what?
It's relative. I mean, so it's what you're used to and what you're seeing. So, I mean, so I've spent most of my life in the DC area, traffic. And then my parents live in Melbourne, Florida. Every time I call my mom, she complains about traffic. I mean, it's not a lot of traffic down there, but there's a lot more traffic. So part of it is the number in Anne Arundel County might be driven by additional traffic from the bridge, but they're just not used to. It's hard to know. And it's not, and the other thing is the question we said, make a higher priority, it's not necessarily where we want to spend our money. They don't necessarily equate those investments with improvements. So
That makes sense. Thank you. Anything else that stood out to you like that might require some explanation like that?
I don't want to say stunned. I was, because it's Maryland. I was really surprised you saw support for the sales tax, given the current environment, and given how much people are struggling financially. That was really wow. Not overwhelming support, but still, I was telling people here, I said, we have to, again, we have to prepare for a bad number here and show that, and we didn't see it. And also, I just think just because it's cool, it's just the massive generational difference on that question. I thought was interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashad. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Madam Secretary.
Yeah, I don't know if you skipped, there's a slide in the deck about shared responsibility and bridge rebuild.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip over that? I didn't mean to.
That one's really curious
Yeah,
because,
honestly, I didn't.
I don't think it was in the presentation.
we have it in our deck and
It's in it.
I just, it's really,
So we asked people, I think we asked people, who do you hold most responsible for what some perceive as the lack of progress in the Francis Scott Key Bridge? They divide responsibility. The state gets the most of the blame, not most of the blame, but quality of blame at 47%. some voters are blaming the federal government, and a lot of this driven by partisanship, so more people in the more conservative parts are less likely to vote to blame the federal government. And then a tiny number of voters, tiny number of people in the population are blaming local governments.
Yeah, the wording bothered me. It
Yeah,
says there
it's
has
a loaded
been little
question.
real progress. My God, this is going at rapid speed. And so the question, it was framed, like struck me. And
Yeah,
then, it was just, and then, maybe it's folks that are less informed about the state's role versus the federal role, but it just, that slide really jumped
I would tell you
out.
they have no idea.
Yeah.
State's role with the federal role.
but
And they never will.
But I think to the secretary's question, that the question was not stated in an objective way.
No, not really.
Okay, here it is, it says,
Well, I'll just be honest, you guys, like the reality is, no matter how the answers would have been the same.
yeah, no, I think you're right.
They don't, people, those of us at the local level, anyway, they don't blame the federal government for anything, because the federal government is responsible for it. They mostly blame either state or local, right? Most time it's us, but in this case, because it's a state road, no matter what people say, this is what's gonna happen. That's just how it goes. People call my office every single day, hundreds of them, saying, hey, I can't get my federal insurance, like every day. They like, okay, did you call the federal government? No, I'm calling you, because you're the mayor. You guys can fix it. Like that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, no, totally fair, but I think this question stands out relative to all the other questions because it is framed in a negative way. So I would just say, if we ask this question next year, you should say,
Exactly.
are they doing well, poorly? So, but this one assumes lack of progress and, asks about lack of progress.
Right, that struck me, and then the numbers, to your point, Mayor, I agree, but maybe it does cause, because this is such a big project, a visible one, that maybe there's work to be done to sort of help folks be more aware.
Until they see a bridge.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think it's
honestly,
also-
until they see cars moving over the bridge.
Yeah.
You're
That's
gonna
a-
see, people are gonna assume there's not been enough progress.
What I took in from that was that the people that are, closest to it,
Right.
the numbers are a little, a little different.
Sir,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't read your name.
Delbestein, thank you. I'm surprised by the numbers on family finances, that they haven't gotten worse, they've actually gotten a little bit better. It seems like, given all the shocks that Americans have had over the past year. Federal layoffs or tariffs, but they're stable and actually a little better than last year's. I mean, any thought on that?
Well, first of all, it's not better, it's the same.
Marginally.
Yeah. I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think part of it too is families are learning, they're learning how to cope within the environment that they're in, right? So things are really bad and they're figuring out, how do you balance your family budget? How do you go and seek help elsewhere? And so, while there's been some costs have gone up, we've recently seen, of course, gas. But I can say from, Dave and I conduct hundreds of focus groups, and we always hear about costs at the start of it. And people will be very fixated on certain, issues. So the cost of meats have really gone up, but then in the same sentence, they'll be like, well, at least the cost of strawberries has gone down, right? Some of it is seasonal. And so there's just some of that ebb and flow in that costs are terrible, families are strapped, but folks are learning how to deal with it and live in this very stressful situation.
And Elliot, I think part of it is that everyone was initially expecting this real big shock from the loss of federal workforce. But the truth is that we saw this even in my budget, right? People are like, I can't believe that your income taxes actually, your revenue went up. Because many of those people found jobs, some of the folks that lost their job, they got brought back, like that I don't think we've actually seen what the impact that's gonna be. A lot of it obviously is held up in court, all of those kind of things. So I would just also just caution us not to get too comfortable with that because the shoe could drop in any moment.
Yeah, and I still think, at the end of the day, you have half of this population that is not doing well. And that's,
Anybody else? All right. It's the executive director.
Great, thank you, Dave. So very quickly as we wrap up, two items I want to flag in my report. One is that this week, we took our scouting trip down to Durham, North Carolina. I missed the mayor at the airport by about 5 minutes down there. That's going to be the location for this year's trip. It is September 22nd to the 24th. Please start thinking about who you guys would all like to nominate to attend. We're going to be asking a little sooner than usual. We bumped up the trip by a month this year. A little on Durham. It is clearly a university town, and the whole region is really driven by the university economy. We'll talk about that. That region has also made a collective pivot between Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill to rethink transit. They're a little ahead of us in a light rail project pivoting to bus rapid transit. We will talk about that transition. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to add anything.
No, listen, I was there for a different reason than my comment, speaking at the mayor's state of the city. But I think it's a perfect fit when you think about what the universities mean to that region, not just from the educational standpoint, like it's like the biggest hospital. I think it's a good fit for us. They have the tech triangle too. It's a great match.
And everything is bull something.
Yeah, everything is bull.
We'll learn more about that when we get down there.
I'm very particular about what color blue you wear. If you're in Durham and you wear anything other than dark blue, someone will say something to you. It's just like we're in Steelers colors here.
The last item to update on is the Chesapeake Leadership Academy. This is BMC's sort of staff leadership program. We're in our second year. Our program is going to begin in May and run through the summer. We've made a few changes. The response last year from participants was great, and we had great support from all of our members in making this happen. It's something we're going to make an annual part of the program. It's something we're going to grow. And we will be releasing more information about that soon, but I want to thank everyone for their support in getting us nominees and making this a project. I know very quickly, County Executive Pittman did have something he wanted to add.
Yeah, just briefly, ask some questions about this later if anybody wants, but you may have read about a moratorium on wastewater allocations in the area around BWI Airport in Monroe County, which is in effect. And I won't go into all the reasons for it, but I will just say that we're talking about in the pipeline, 3,000 housing units that are now installed. A lot of jobs, a lot of logistics, economic development, the whole region benefits from when it works around the airport. So it's a crisis for us, but we've had great meetings with Baltimore County, Baltimore City, MDE, Mayor's Office, BWI Airport, and we think that we are going to have some good news very soon. And part of the good news is we've changed our capital budget. We'll be announcing that shortly. To put another $60 million into diverting flow to the south, which really helps with the core of the problem, which is Tapsco wastewater treatment and overflows into the Tapsco River. So it's been a great process, a regional process. I think we're close, and cross your fingers for us, for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On that note, before we move to our last item, we want to recognize the person that's led us over the past year. We know that, I know he has a countdown clock on his desk. How many days do you have left?
I just know the date, December 6th.
Yeah, it's a countdown clock. But we know that the county executive has been a staunch leader, not just of this organization, but really not just in the region, but in the state. We want to thank him for all of his service. I want to thank him for his partnership, his friendship, and many of the battles that he and I fought together. And sometimes alone. So thank you, Mr. Executive, and cheers to the next thing for you.
Thank you.
Look here.
Looks like you could drink it.
Not that kind of board, Mr.
There you go.
All right, wow. That's beautiful. Is that the right shade of blue for?
That's definitely. Definitely the right shit.
Thanks, guys. I love this organization. It's a very, very important, impactful organization. So thanks for taking the mantle.
Thank you. Last, Charles gonna lead us through a public participation opportunity.
Don't believe we have anyone in the room signed up. So, Mr. Mayor, I believe we are ready.
All right, at this point, I'd like to close the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is closed. Thank you very much, everybody.